right, so we are here with Pat Perez, David Pirkle, and Nielsen Havisto, if you don't know them. All right, now you know who everybody is, and we just wanted to do this to have a little discussion. These guys all have great builds, and we just wanted to introduce everybody and have a nice little discussion going. I also wanted to, as I had mentioned, I wanted to talk about things that I need to improve on in the company. I know it's big for me. It's something that I really want to do. I want to just keep making the company better, and anything I can do. Obviously, you guys don't deal with just me, and I wouldn't expect you to. But my end goal is to be the one-stop shop for everybody. So I wanted to talk to some guys that have some impressive builds that might help point me in the direction. So it's a little bit of greed on my end. I want to be your guys' only place. So. That being said, I'm going to give you guys the floor a little bit, each of you, to explain, your builds. You go into as much detail as you want, just whatever you're willing to divulge. I know some people might have some secrets, but, just give some details about who you are, where you're from, what your build is, and, and then we'll take it from there. We'll start talking about some other topics. But, Nielsen, I'll let you go ahead first.
Okay. I got an 08 Pontiac G8 GT. The stock bottom end 5.3, TH400, solid axle, pretty much purpose built for drag racing, but I daily drive it as well. It knocked down 853 at 159 this year, so going to be going to a built motor soon, but for me it's hard to get away from the stock bottom end because it's working.
Yeah, daily drives a car that's pushing 850s. I can just see like pulling up to like the McDonald's. Let me get a Big Mac. And like, sir, please turn your car off. I can't hear what
I do have to turn it off. Yes,
along with the
any drive-through.
Exactly. Can't hear over the whine of the triple 450s you have in the back. What do you do for fuel and something like that? I'm assuming you're running what, E85 meth? What do you run?
E85. Yep.
Yeah. You have an injection or?
What do you mean?
Meth injection as well, I'm assuming?
Nope. Just pump E85, whatever I get. It's usually around 76%.
That's crazy, man. Good for you.
32 pounds of boost.
Hey, 32 pounds of boost, stock bottom end. See? And they say it can't be done. It can be done. It can be done.
Well, it can be done. People do it all the time. It's just, it's a learning curve to figure out how to keep it alive and healthy.
Well, how long has yours been going?
So the current motor is only a year. The motor before that was 4.5, 5 years.
Same type of setup?
Blew a couple of head gasket. Exact same setup. I just went from an iron to aluminum to drop some weight. Okay. And then I killed like 3 in a row before that within 3 months each.
So quite a learning curve, an expensive learning curve.
Yeah, I mean they're all junkyard motors. They're like $200 to $400. So,
see, I'll be honest, that's the best part about the LS. If you're looking to build a drag car, there's hundreds of thousands of these things sitting in dumpsters all over the place. You could go to a junkyard in any state, any county, and find something with an LS in it. And if you're willing to put the time in, you can make a race car to just about anything with an LS, and it's like you said,
most definitely.
$200 for a motor, it's like, you almost don't feel bad popping them at that point,
No.
Right.
You're like,
swap it and go again.
I get more mag that usually ruins the camshaft. And it's like, oh man, that was like $300.
That's 90% of what I paid for the motor. That's ridiculous.
Right. Exactly.
The supporting parts are more than what you paid for the block. That's hilarious. All right, no, Dave, what about you?
Currently, I have a 09 that's been converted over to a 6-speed. It's got a 408 with AFR heads, custom cam in it. We took a lot of weight out of the bottom end. So she turns really quick and a lot of RPMs for it. Don't know numbers, really. She's never really been able to do a clean pass. Either something breaks every time. Last time, yeah, that one was a good one. It's still not fixed from that situation. The trans is fixed. It's ready to go in. I'm waiting on the axle cups from G-Force. It's got I completely redid the transmission in it. We blew the output shaft at Extravaganza that night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's all back together. It's just waiting on the cups. I think they come in today. So I'll have that probably put it back in tomorrow and it'll be running again. But other than that, I mean, I think it ran the first time in this particular car, it ran 11.3 and it blew out the cradle bushing with like a 270, 60 foot. So, yeah. I mean, for NA, she's moving pretty good in a manual car. So
listen, I'll tell you what, man, manual. He's being modest here. And, you know, me and him, no. When we were down at the extravaganza, now mind you, me and Dave, we've talked online for quite a while. Right. And, I went down to the last extravaganza. Was it now going on 2 years, right? I think, or it wasn't last year.
March. Yeah, it was last year.
So you can see how my timeline is, but
right.
Yeah, and I had never met Dave before then, and you know, we just clicked up, but we hung out the entire time. And by the way, thank you. He was such a help. I mean, is a teddy bear, bro. But yeah, so we did a poll down there, and I knew his car was a 408, right? And I knew he had some power. I mean, you could hear the car, and you know the car's got power, right? I'm like, all right, well, I was in my G8, and you know, as some as you guys know, and I'll go through my segment afterwards. But you know, it's a boosted 6.0, right? It's got an LSA in it, so I was expecting, and I say this, Dave, as this is a prideful statement. I was expecting it to be pretty much no contest, right? Like I was like, all right, we're gonna go against, we're gonna hit off the highway, we'll see what happens. And I tell you, my man was all over me like my shadow, right? And I remember after the fact, did you win? You might even have won. Did you win? I don't remember.
I was starting to pull on you, and then I think we ran up on some other people that was on the road. I mean, I was coming up on your door. So
yeah, it was, and I remember later that night we were talking, and he had popped a motor, and I'm like, because in my head I'm like, I'm looking for nitrous lines or something. I'm like, there's got to be something, you know. And he's like, no, man, it's just a NA 408. I'm like, bullshit, dude. My car sucks, bro. I'm selling this piece of shit. Yeah? And now, mind you, I was all hyped too because you remember my car, and again, I'll get into it a little bit later. But my car, you know, for what's done to it, is impressively quick. You know, right. His car is very impressive for an NA build. You know, and when I saw you, when you had told me what it put down numbers at the track, I was like, no, you had a bad run. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah, it's never had a clean run ever. Like either the check engine light will come 3/4 of the way down, something will break, this, that, or the other. I mean, it's just crazy, but it's been a very strong motor. It's got 50,000 miles on it. I dailied it for 3 years.
Now,
and
now you're also Dave. No, I'm sorry, not to cut you off. I didn't even cut you off. Dave is one of the first people I think that you have that Dietzwerks pump in there, right?
Yes. Yeah, I was the test guinea pig for that situation.
Yeah. So a couple of years back, Dietzwerks had released for the 5th gen Camaro. They released a dual pump setup with, I think it was 330s, right? Was 330s in there? 340s?
Yeah.
Right?
340s.
340s.
Two 340s.
Yeah. So it was a dual 340 setup. And we had put one on my car when they first came out. I want to say I saw them at SEMA or something. I don't remember. And I came back and I grabbed one right away. And we put it on my car and it blew the line right out, right? Because our tanks are shallower. So when it you know, compressed the tank, when it compressed the pump, it just crimped the line, blew the line out. So they had reinvented it. And I was talking to Dave, and he's like, I need fuel. Let's get one going. I'm like, yo, you want to be the test dummy? Let's make it happen. You know, so we set one out, and happy to report it works great. And they've actually, what's great about it is Dietzwerks now also, you know, even though they only use Dietzwerks pumps, you know, that's what they recommend, but you could throw any TI pump in it. So you could run dual 525s if you wanted to in it. And it's a drop-in solution. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And it works with the stock fuel arm too.
Yeah,
that was a great thing. My level sensor and everything worked and all that. The only thing I technically need to do is run a return line, or I'm going to have to tap into a piggyback to have the secondary pump come on at a different time. Because if I get into it on a hard pull and then try to drive it afterwards, it's got too much pressure in it. I guess deadhead pressure in the line that it's not liking it. It'll pop that fuse. So,
Well, are you running the stock line up?
yeah.
Or so why not upgrade the stock line to a -8 and then just reuse your stock line as a return?
Because it won't stay together long enough to be able to do it.
That's a pretty good
idea.
reason.
If I can keep the car
That's a pretty
together.
good reason.
All right, moving on. We'll go to Pat. I know, Pat, you just finished a build.
I did. Took me a little under 11 months to get it done, from roller to driving on the road. It's 2009 G8 GT. It's got a 408 stroker LQ9 block. It's got runs off the Holley Terminator system with the Turbo 400 3-speed tranny.
Oh, nice.
And that is
and you just finished it, right? Like just very recently.
It. Got 400 miles on it.
That's awesome.
It's E85 Bosch 210 injectors, and then it has a Borg Warner 88 millimeter.
So he's going after the boost. He's one of those boost guys.
Yeah, I think we did 1,009 horsepower at 20 pounds.
Yeah. So what's Nielsen putting down with this? 28 pounds.
It'd be like 1,150, 1,200 ish. I've never dynoed it, but I've got quite a bit of weight pulled out of my car for being a turbo setup.
Yeah, you guys, man, with these 4-digit horsepowers, bro. Like,
when your car's that fucking heavy, man, it's hard to move. It's hard to move because I have everything. I put a 20-gallon fuel cell in the back, ripped the stock fuel tank out. I ran AN lines, even put a Volvo electronic power steering pump in the trunk because steering that thing with no power steering is god awful. Yeah. And
I'm sorry.
I did all the wiring for all of it, and it was a pain to figure it all out.
I can imagine. See, that's one thing, like I had mentioned with Rick, when you see in the podcast I did with Rick, we touched on this a little bit. Like, it's impressive for me anyway to see these cars get drug across the line in any kind of single digit territory, even close to a single. I mean, when you think about what you're really driving, right? When you think about the fact that you're driving a 4,000-pound car that only accepts nothing wider than a 305 without some serious modification, right? Or risking tires left and right. I mean, in the world of 4-digit horsepower, I mean, like, show me one Corvette, one Camaro that's over 1,000 horsepower that's running just a 305. I know the guy next door, he builds these monsters left and right, and they're all the LT stuff. But I mean, if the 305 is where they start, and that's where we end, and their suspensions are set up better. I mean, we have a car that was literally designed to be a mom and pop mobile with an LS motor in it. And we're able to, not me, but you guys are able to drag these things across the line, in single digits consistently without even, granted you're on several motors in, but still the fact that it's able to happen. It's so impressive to me, because they were not meant for this, and like we are so far past what GM just, was expecting out of this, I'm sure. And it's really impressive.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever done a true pass on mine. I built it, blew the first motor. Yeah, built it, blew. I put another motor in it, and the first motor blew. It took me about a month to build another one and put it back in. And by that time, it was already getting cold here in Colorado, so it was time to put it away. So I've still yet to figure out my track time, but it will be coming.
Yeah, well, let us know. A little about myself, my car. If you don't know, I have an 08 G8. Started out as a V6. It was what do you call it? Like a rental car. I had to look it up because it was so stripped when I got this thing. I mean, I'm surprised it had power windows. If I'm being honest with you, this thing was like the base model. I went through and. My goal was, I knew at some point I was going to LS swap it, right? So I shouldn't say LS swap. They came with LS from factory. I just had the shitty one, right? But I knew at some point it was going V8. So I was like, you know what? Let me see how much this little V6 could handle. So I had a custom supercharger kit made for it, and some of the dumbest money I've spent. And that didn't work out. So now it's a L76 out of a GT with an LSA on it, mild build. I could tout that it's touched the nines, but I can't get it to go that fast. I think my fastest pass was like a 10. It was close. It was like a 10:01 or 10:15 or something. It was real close, real close, close enough that I was happy with it. But Rick got it in the nines. But if you guys know Rick, I mean, he's a jockey. That's who that's who you get when you want to time slip. You could be, you could brag about, because he'll get you that extra 10th because he's this big. You know what I'm saying?
Or 3.
Yeah, he
can launch it better than you too.
And it sucks when you see someone else drive your car better than you. You know what I'm saying?
It's gotta hurt.
It does, because he got in it. It was funny because he got in it. We were at the track and he went 999, and he's like, "Oh man, it's in there." He didn't. We were both expecting like a 1050. And then I get in it and it went like a 10:01, like right after. And he's like, "Wow, you got it. Keep going." I was like, "No, I'm good." He's like, "No." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "This is a fresh build." I'm like, I'm not stupid. If you got a 999, I'm cool with breaking the 10s. I'm cool with being low 10s. I'm cool with that. I don't, I got 100 pounds on you, bro. I'm not, at least probably more than that. I'm not even trying, but yeah, so that's it. So now everyone's acquainted with the builds, right? I wanted to touch on, now getting into the meat of it. What I'm looking to get out of it, right, is I know you guys, obviously you don't buy all your parts. I don't even sell turbos, right? So, but, what, from a customer standpoint, because you guys have all bought stuff from me in the past, right? So from a customer standpoint, like, what can I do better? Right? I mean, and you're not going to hurt feelings here. You know what I'm saying? You can tell me I suck. I don't care. But I'm just curious, what brands do you think I should carry? What parts do you think I should carry? Where do I fall short? What can I do to be better at what I do? It's my yearly review.
I think what I notice or see is it's tailored more towards like stock G8s or stock Chevys wanting to beef up their ride. I'd like to see some turbo sensors, maybe like a low dollar 3-port valves or anything Holley. I know Holley's a tough one to get into on a site, but I would like to see it more, or at least a section towards us Frankenstein turbo builds.
Yeah, I mean that is something that I've thought about. I've put some thought into. I'm not going to lie and say I've put a ton of time into the turbo parts. The thing with turbos too that I found challenging, and I hopefully you guys can help me out on this. There's so many companies that make so many similar parts, right?
Yep.
When you get into turbos, I mean, if you were looking for something like a wastegate, I mean, there's probably a dozen companies you can name off the top of your head, and then you get these guys who come in and say, "Hey, do you get Brian Fab, wastegates? They're a small company out of California, but my buddy has them and 10 of their buddies have them. They love them. The best thing on earth." I'm like, I never even heard of these people, and it happens all the time. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't want to call them small companies, but they're not on the radar of something you would find at a summit or something like that. Like they're not a household name, if you will, when it comes to performance parts. And it's like, I don't even know how to get a hold of these guys. And also even playing with the big guys. I mean, Turbo Smart versus everybody else. And, and I see this even with fuel, I mean, I get the same question with fuel guys. I sell a lot of four kits, right? Which are great. But then guys are like, "Oh, well, can you get a regulator from this company? Can you get a regulator?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I could, but there's 9 million regulators out there." And the same thing with, when it comes to turbo stuff, there's a couple guys that make really, really great kits, and I am direct with Turbo Joe. So we have discussed a little bit about pulling his kits onto the site. But
Joe and Joe.
Yeah, right. It's the Joes. I mean, you can't go wrong, but, touching on what you're saying, Pat, and Nielsen chime in on this as well. What turbo parts, like what manufacturers are you seeing that you say are really leading the industry in the parts? Like they're the guys that you want. When you're out shopping, those are the brands you're looking at.
Man, that's so tough.
I know. That's what
after I brought up the subject, I started thinking it's like there's so many different variations of different parts and setups that's what kind of makes a turbo car so unique, is because there is so many different types of brands and parts and different versions of that part that you piece it together and you figure out what kind of works and what doesn't work for you. And that's why I think you can never find the same turbo build with two cars,
I mean, you even look at shit, man, go on Google and type in, blow off valve, right? I mean, like how many are there? I mean, and it's not just that how many companies there are, how many variations does each company make? Right. And then, I mean, I've had people call me up for blow off valves. They're like, I want one that sounds like a turkey and I want one that sounds like this. I'm like, dude, it's one thing for me to know the companies, okay, I know the company. I know this company makes blow off valves. Now, do I know which one of their blow off valves sounds like a turkey? You know what I'm saying? Like, what do I even sell this guy? I call up their tech line and say, hey, I'm direct with you guys. I'm just curious. I have a customer looking for a turkey sound. Do you have that? It becomes difficult, but that's why I wanted to talk to guys like you, because I wanted to know, as far as like a product line, let's say you guys were to say, I'll just use Turbo Smart because it just the name just keeps popping in my head, probably because the word turbo's in the name, right? But like a Turbo Smart, right? I could list every one of their products. You know what I'm saying? I could go through their catalog and I could have, I could literally duplicate their catalog and say, look, now I got 9,000 Turbo Smart products. But I don't want to do that and have, let's say, somebody like Pat go in there and he's looking for a blow-off valve and he sees now there's 9,000 blow-off valves. Now it's almost like when you go to you go to one of like those restaurants or something and they have a menu this thick and you're like, this is too much. Now I can't decide. You know what I'm saying? So, is there anything that you guys know that like jumps out at you when when you're looking for like a brand? I'm not looking at a specific product, but something that you would say is, hey, these guys are top notch, and this is, every time I'm looking for something, this is where I go.
I mean, for me, my car started as a budget build, and I ran budget parts as hard as I could until I absolutely had to upgrade. It wouldn't be until I had 2 or 3 failures before I'd be like, okay, I got to move on to something else here. So, I run a VS turbo. They're very inexpensive and it works.
Yeah. I've heard a lot. I've heard that.
They seem to stand behind their product. One of my friends, all my friends run VS turbos, but one of them had a failure and they took care of it. No problem. So, for me, like that works. I'm going to keep running it until there's a reason to buy a Precision or a Comp or one of the high dollar turbos.
Right. All right.
And I would probably go towards like sensors, if anything, for a turbo build, because that's me doing the research for it. I'm as green as they come for all this. So doing the research, that was all the small things that I didn't realize I needed until putting everything together and trying to make my blow off valve or my boost controller work. It was all these small sensors or like a bar sensor, those are the things that I really didn't think about putting together a parts list until it came to connecting everything and figuring out that, hey, I actually need something to read from this. So it would be cool to see like maybe low dollar. I made the mistake of thinking that Holley was the one, the only, and I bought Holley everything really expensive, started playing around with like low dollar sensors and Mac valves. They work great. Haven't had a problem yet. And I don't think that necessarily the Holley name is the best, but it's just kind of what works for you, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of good things about the low dollar.
Yeah. Low dollar is really good.
A lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the higher dollar parts, right? Because they have the name recognition or whatever. But at the end of the day, we all see it. I'm sure we all see. There's something in your car that you're like, I'm not spending that on this. This guy makes this competitor makes one for 30% cheaper. You put it on, you're like, oh shit! All right, it's actually really nice. So I'm all for that.
I got a Holley Pro Dash and it was a pain to do.
I bet.
All right.
You so integrate it right into the console and everything or whatever?
Yeah, so I bought one from, I think it was Mako Motorsports in Australia. They make like a 3D printed insert. You just rip the old cluster out. Because I don't run stock computers or anything. Everything's Holley. So just rip the old cluster out, put that one in, wired in the fuel level sender, and that was pretty much it. But to do it all from not knowing to knowing, it was difficult. it was a hard process.
Well, you have a good background too, though. I mean, you've been dealing with, you've been fixing cars for a long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Electrical's always. Oof.
I won't mess with electrical, man. That's one thing I'll
probably like 1 in 100 technicians that just like loves and's great electrical, and every other one just dreads it.
Yep.
And the worst part is I'm colorblind.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
So I'd have my girlfriend. I'd have my girlfriend come out to the garage and point out a wire and be like, "This one's it. All right, thank you. See you in 5 minutes."
Purple or red?
Man, that is like bad luck.
Wow, that'd be hard.
If you have to do wiring. Yeah, I won't touch a wire. And when it comes to wiring, like even if it's something simple, I'll do it, and then I'm going to have somebody who's good at wiring double check it for me, because I do not trust it, man. I've chased down wiring issues too many times. It's just not worth it for me. And there's people out there I know, and I'm sure you guys know, who are just very good at it, and they don't have, like, somehow they never run into an issue. But me, I can't. I couldn't put in a wideband without giving myself a parasitic draw somewhere. Like, I have no, like, it's just it's like all I did was plug and play, and somehow I got a new battery every 3.5 weeks, but it's horrible, man. I'm just bad with it. But there's always two versions of every industry, right? There's the guys who are either just getting into it or don't have a ton of money to spend, so they're looking for the budget end of things. And then there's the guys who are like, hey, man, I'm all in on this. I've had customers, who have called me up and said, look, dude, I'm missing a mortgage payment to buy this. And I'm like, okay, you know what I'm saying? But there's guys who are like, you do you, boo boo. But there's guys out there who literally will spend the coin regardless of what it is for a quality product. So, that's kind of where I want to. I want to have a clear line in the sand. Obviously, I can't put something on the site that says, here's your budget bill section. Here's your, here's if you have the money to blow. But I do want to be able to make both of those guys happy. I want to be able to say, look, I have products for everybody, whether it be a budget build, which we've already talked about. A lot of the budget stuff works just as good, if not better than the high dollar stuff. But so, that is something that I want to do. And that's what I'm interested in doing moving forward. Now, besides the turbo stuff, right? Turbo stuff is something I have dove into before. What about So I one of the things I see, I see a lot of guys that are running different exhausts, right? So the big exhaust in the G8 world is what? Cook Solo, pretty much, right? That's like everyone's go-to. Or Cook's Corsa, American Racing Header is not far behind. Stainless Works. Yep. I got to be honest, I barely sell any Stainless Works. It's just not something that's that the G8 community is like really tuned in on. But I also see a lot of guys who are doing, they're doing custom. They're running like Black Widow exhausts. They're buying like aftermarket mufflers, and they're using a Solo. I actually have a bunch of guys I know that have bought Solo exhaust, yanked out the mid mufflers or yanked out the X and thrown in like a Black Widow, which sound amazing, by the way. But they really do. They're a great sound. Yeah. And they're you want to talk about budget? They are very affordable, and they just sound good. I actually heard about it from Rick, and I was like, what the hell is that? He's like, oh, it's a Black Widow. And he said it, and it just kind of was like, it just kind of floated to the back of my head. I just forgot about it. And then like over the next like 6 months, about a dozen dudes mentioned it to me, and I was like, wow, okay. But like, so what other products are you guys putting on your site on your cars that, that are maybe they might be niche, right? They might be something that isn't well known, or a company that's just not on a lot of people's radar. Because this isn't just for me; it's for other people as well. I want other people to know, like you guys have 3 very respectable builds. What kind of parts are you putting on there that the guy who's just starting out, who might not be, may or may not be in the budget area of it, who's just not really sure what to do. He wants to know what other people are doing. What do you guys got?
ICT Billet.
Yeah, they're such an awesome company.
I think that buying like a whole kit for my belt drive, that saved me so much research. That fabricating, trying to screw with things. They have a kit for each style of engine and what you're trying to do, where you want to place your alternator, your power steering bracket. And I think that is like a great starting point for someone who's trying to, mess around with it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. ICT Billet is one of those companies where it's like, man, I really need this part, and I don't know who the hell would make it, and you Google it, it's like first pop up, ICT Billet makes it. Of course they do, and like they're one of those companies that just seem to have the answer for everything. And God bless them, man. They're awesome. Yeah. So you guys are all running, are you all running Turbo 400s? No, Dave, you're running manual.
Yep.
But you guys are both running Turbo 400s, right?
Yep.
I see a big push into that. And Dave, yours is just the manual out of the G8GXP or the 6060?
Yeah, it is. It's the TR6060 with the detachable, so it's the right one. The owner beforehand, he had done the swap, and he did the right stuff. I mean, he didn't spare any expense on it. So I got the what did we put in that? A McLeod? I think that's what we put in.
Yeah, it was a McLeod, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you which one, but yeah.
It was the.
Yeah, see, you can't even know.
Yeah, it's the 12. Well, I mean, dude, how many clutches have I got from you since then? Well, there's just so many different cars. It's the same one we just did in Manny's too. But, I mean, it's been fine as far as that part goes. As far as like from me, I think a lot of people would probably enjoy like we had talked about doing, like a how-to or some guidance and stuff like that. I'm kind of the do it once and be done with it type. So I spent a lot of money learning the hard way when I was younger. So like I like a lot of the manly stuff, like for your valve springs and your valves and stuff like that. And it kind of seems like most people's go-to is the LS7, the hollow valve stem. And I mean, those are great if you're just only running them like, race car status where you're only going through it and that's the end of it. But if you're daily in those things, man, you need something that's going to like last. Cause I mean, I don't know how many of them I've heard that just pop off, the end of the valve and there you go.
Yeah. I mean, you look at, and some of the guys that, these big shops that are doing these, heads like Frankenstein and Brodix and stuff like that. You look at a lot of them run Manly valves, and it's funny because Manly's like 20 minutes from me, they're literally up the street. I met them out in SEMA, and it's funny because the guy that I met, obviously he lives near me because they're right up the street, and he's like, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Oh, Jersey." He's like, "Oh, whereabouts?" I tell him, he's like, Tom's River. I'm like, "Wow, that's where the office is." He's like, "Bro, come by." He's like, like, you could be here in 10 minutes. I'm like, "Oh yeah," and I still haven't gone by. And I actually just saw him at ILS, and he's like, "Still haven't seen you at Manly." I was like, "All right, I'll swing by." But Manly's awesome. I mean, I used to actually have a job right by Manly, and the cars that they have coming in and out of there, like just like for R&D and stuff, is just like enough to make you drool. It's really incredible. So so Manly's definitely something it is on my radar, and I have to, like I said, I got to get down there and talk to these guys. But yeah, Manly makes a lot of great stuff. Good.
Manual steering rack.
That's a big one. That
really
no one's addressed unless you're willing to spend crazy money.
Was it the Flaming River one? Is like $1,400-$1,500. I tried finding a company to do it for me, and it is expensive. I know everyone who's trying to build one wants to get rid of power steering to put a turbo in. If they can fit it, all power to you. I couldn't do it. I tried finding a manual rack. I tried doing the loop with the fluid, just was not what I was looking for. That's why I did the electronic power steering. But if I could find me a manual power steering or manual rack, that's what I would go with.
Okay.
That might even tie in with like a K member or something. Find somebody else to do a K member that might drop it down, kind of like Maximum Motorsports. They have for like the Mustang stuff. I used to do a lot of that, and they have like different levels where you can move it up and down. And they even have replacement bushings where you knock the bushings out that are solid, and then they have 3 different holes where you can move it up and down or move it left and right. So that's another thing you might look at too.
Yeah, and we did. Well,
I was going to say, which I have the access to the machine shop, so. But me finding time is kind of like trying to get a hold of you or Rick. It's just like it doesn't happen.
I'm a little easier than Rick. I mean,
you are usually.
I try. Yeah, I know. I feel so bad because I try to tell people too. Don't text me. I know that sounds like such an asshole thing to say, right? Like, don't text me. I'm not going to read it. I don't read them. And it's funny because it seems to be isolated just to actual text messages. Like, I won't read them. I don't know. My brain blocks them out. I don't see them or what. But like, my wife yells at me, and now my wife actually, if she needs to get a hold of me, she'll hit me up on Facebook Messenger because she knows I'm on there all day. Right. Talking to people. So she's like, I just hit you up on Facebook. What's the sense? Everybody else, that's the only way to get a hold of you, really. I actually, the only time I even see my text messages is like once a week or so. I'll go through my phone and I just go and I just mark them all as read. You know what I'm saying? I don't even bother like looking at them. And you know what it is too? I think what started for me with the text message thing is, a lot of people, because when I call people, I always use my cell phone. I don't know why I have an office phone, but I always use my cell phone. So I get a lot of random people that just text me, right? And they'll text me questions, whether it be about an order or whether it just be a random like tech question, whatever it is. But I have no idea who they are, right? So Facebook, at least it tells me your name. I know who you are. You know what I'm saying? Right. But when I get a random number from a state that a zip code or an area code I'm not familiar with, and somebody texts me like, "Hey man, you ever find out about that thing?" I'm like, I don't know who this is. And I there's no backstory. I can't like scroll up to see what they're talking about. So I'm just like, I don't even bother answering because at least then they won't get the read receipt and they know that I never read it. I know that sounds bad, but there's no way I'm going to know who that is. And then I feel like a jerk if I'm like, hey man, just refresh my memory. Who the hell are you? It's just, so I think that kind of set the path. And now I just don't even bother looking at them, on Facebook, the Messenger, like, that gets crazy. That's why I've made those posts in the past where I'm like, guys, please, if it's about G8 only, hit me up on the G8 only page. So at least then that keeps really good records. I'm able to search it really easily. It's just, it's made, it's made for business. It's made to be able to keep those type of records. But text messages are real rough for me.
What about yourself, man? What about customer requests on parts? What is like one thing you're trying to get onto the webpage?
I try to take the requests of my customers very seriously. If a customer comes to me and says, "Hey, Joe, I'm interested in this type of part," I will do everything I can to try to get those types of parts. Even like wheels, I get a lot of requests for wheels. That is one thing I get a lot of requests for. Wheels are really hard. If you guys have all shopped for wheels for these cars, I'm sure they are not an easy car to buy wheels for. Our wheelbase is absolute garbage. Our clearances are shit. And then if you go outside the box and throw a set of Brembos on it, forget it, dude. You just cut, you cut your chances of getting like a nice wheel down by 80%, but that is something
you really got to know all the specs if you're doing anything besides a cookie cutter wheel setup. Yeah. You got to use wheel calculators and make sure everything's spaced out right and just, and even that, take the risk. And if you're wrong, well,
that's the thing too, because wheel companies, the way they look at it, like you mount the wheel on your car, you own it.
Right.
So you could spend a ton of money on a set of wheels and be stuck with them if they don't fit right. And that's a lot for me to take on because I stand behind, my company and the things I sell. So if I sell you a wheel and it doesn't fit the way you want it to fit, I'm not going to say, oh, sorry, X company said you're beat because you put it on your car. Like, I'm going to feel obligated to take this thing back. And now I have, a set of 4 wheels that don't fit on a car sitting in my warehouse, just eating up space, and you got your money back and I got $2,000 worth of wheels I can't use in the back, So, one of the companies I just recently reached out to was Apex Race Wheels. They make some amazing wheels. Now, one of the things with us, through research, I found is a lot of BMW wheels fit really well on our car. Yep. You just have to know which ones. You really have to pay attention to the specs, and you also have to pay attention to the spoke design, which is something I learned early on because you get something that on paper it's the right fitment, right? Oh, it's it's a 19, 9.5, or a 38 offset. It fits. Yeah. Until you get it and you realize that the spoke is 2.5 inches wide and it's smacking it's smacking the caliper. And you're like, wait, but it should fit, you know what I'm saying? So, there's other specs, right? What's the caliper clearance? Apex makes some, like I said, they make some great wheels. And that is something I'm looking at putting on the site soon. But I actually have a list where with all the Apex wheels, I went through their entire catalog. And I said, okay, this will fit. And then I actually made notes to it. Like, this fits the front flush. This fits the front very aggressive. This fits the rear, with on stock, without rolling the fenders. This will fit with rolling the fenders, and there's so many variables. And, one of the things I've noticed with my, I don't want to say customer base, but with a lot of the sales is people really don't read. When people buy online, they really don't read,
No.
I can't tell you how many.
I saw it somewhere on someone's car, and they're like, "I want that fix."
It's on this
website. I'm buying it.
So when it comes to wheels, I get a little scared. I'm not going to lie to you, because if I have it on the site, people just assume if it's on the site, it fits, no questions asked, and they buy a set of wheels, right? Oh yeah, yeah. 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 Even I've had so many people ask me about the specs of my wheels on the SS because the fitment is like perfectly flush, right? And my car's slammed. And guys are like, "Oh, how'd you get it? What's the fitment?" I won't share it. And not to be a jerk, but because I know if they go somewhere else and they buy those wheels or a wheel like that with that fitment, it's not going to fit on the car. I'm running negative camber up front, just enough to clear. But when I first put them on at zero, these things sat outside the wheel well, like an inch and a half. I remember when I first put them on, I saw them, I was like, that sucks. You know what I'm saying? Like, I did all the measurements, measure twice, buy once. And they're rotiforms. They're not cheap. And, it's a 3-piece. And I'm like, okay, that's, $1,500 per wheel. I just pissed away. I got to buy new fronts. And I called up the guy at Rotiform. He's like, trust me, the specs are good. He's like, add a little bit of camber. I put camber on it. Once we put the weight on it, it's sucked in perfectly. And they fit like a dream. But there's a lot that goes into it. Now, if I sell a wheel like that to a customer and he sees that,
it ain't gonna go well.
or like my rears are my fenders are not just tucked. They're not just rolled. They're pulled, right? So I have my fenders rolled and pulled to fit those. Now I give somebody those specs, they buy it and they just roll the fenders. And even if they do, like most guys don't do a super great job at rolling fenders. I've seen some things that scare me, but they roll the fenders and they put these things on and they're chewing tires. And now it's my fault. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I get scared, but at the same time, I know wheels is a big issue. Everybody wants wheels, right? Everybody, so it's one of those things I'm gonna have to put like a disclaimer on the site. Like, I have read all the, like I have read everything. I understand that, that these things may require modification or whatnot. But yeah, so wheels is always a big one for me. Unfortunately with the G8, good.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
No, unfortunately with the G8 and the SS, a lot of vehicle specific stuff is just not available, right? We had short run cars and a lot of aftermarket companies don't really see the value. So a lot of us are stuck outside the box trying to find something for another vehicle on a similar platform that's going to work for us. That's actually how G8 only was born. That's where the name comes from, because when I was looking for parts for my car, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work on my car. It's just for a basic LS. I don't know if this is going to fit my car, and that's where the name G8 only came from. I was like, well, I'm going to make a site that only sells parts for G8s. And if it's on here, it works for the G8 because it's for G8s only, and I found quickly that I was not the only one having that issue. That was definitely something that was throughout the entire community. But go ahead, Pat. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm glad you actually said it because that's where I was going. Like retainer clips of any and all pieces of the car. They are extremely, extremely hard to find. And if you do find them, buy them and save them for whenever you're going to need them. For, windshield trim pieces, anything, door seals, any type of retainer clip, they're not being made anymore. They were made for a very short time. Yeah. And they are extremely, extremely hard to find.
Well, that brings me to a good plug here for a buddy of mine, Mark Wolf over at Commodore Specialties. He has a lot of hard to find clips. he brings in a lot of stuff because we got to remember, for us, these cars were a 2-year run, right? The G8. But in Australia, these things were, what, a 9-year run? They had them 7 or 9 years. What is 2000? Was the first one 2007 to 13? So 7 years, right? They had these things almost, right? And they produce these things like Honda Civics out there, So I mean, the parts they're everywhere. They are everywhere out there, man. But I wish I could tap into that market. I could retire, right? If I could ship over to Australia cheap. But yeah, so like a lot of stuff that we're looking for, like those hard to find little pieces, those little retaining clips or whatnot. As long as it's not a left-hand versus right-hand drive part, like an interior trim piece that just won't work because it's spaced the other way. Talk to someone like Mark Wolf. He could definitely, I shouldn't say definitely because I can't speak for him, but he could probably help you out. I know he's helped a ton of people out with stuff, these hard to get parts. So
speaking of that, do you do any of the center gauge reprogramming stuff to get the different oil pressure?
The Atari gauges?
Yeah.
I don't. Who?
There's a few that do. I didn't know if you had that because that's been on my bucket list forever, and I just haven't done it because it's inconvenient to me. But every time I look at them, I'm like, oh, I really should do that.
Because they're like, from the factory, they're just practically useless. You might as well just put some black tape over them. Who was it? White Automotive does it, I think. Is that
White something? White Audio or something.
Yeah, I think he does it. I think he might have been the first one doing it. I
think so.
I've seen some people that have had gauges done. I'm pretty sure by him, and it's impressive. It's definitely better than the factory units. That's for sure.
I think that is White Audio or White Auto in Media.
Yep. They actually do a lot of stuff. I was actually they do a lot of stuff for like late model stuff too. I was going to buy a new cluster for my truck from them.
It seems like a lot of guys are really leaning towards the drag racing with these cars, right?
Yeah.
And now they're getting old enough, get enough high miles, a little beat up, so people aren't afraid to cut them up and do this and do that.
For sure.
They're not trying to keep them mint anymore. So I see a lot of guys looking for drag suspension way more than they ever used to.
Yeah, I agree.
So I know you carry like the Shockworks, Waveworks, or something.
Shockworks, right.
Yeah, but like in my opinion, it's not a dedicated drag coiler. That's could be used, but meant for like street car stuff.
Absolutely, but, that is weekend warrior stuff. That's not dedicated drag car.
But yeah, if you were to get into some of those, I don't know, AFCO, Vikings, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm getting inboxes weekly asking, hey, what suspension you're running? How do you make your car do that?
Yeah, no, I believe it. And that's a weak point in these cars from the factory with suspension, right? And, again, we're limited on what's available. And you can definitely go outside the box and you can create something. One of the things that, the big issue that a lot of guys have, obviously throwing 15s on the car, right? Anybody making any kind of serious power, they want to put a set of 15s on the car. And, as we all know, it's not the easiest thing to do. You could go, there's a few kits out there, most of them are just iterations of a Camaro kit that just happen to work for us, right? Because nobody cares enough about the G8 specifically to make them. But even then, it's not like a simple bolt on. It's like, okay, well, I have this, and now I have to buy these 9 different pieces. Now I need new brakes to do it. I need this. I need that. One of the things I would like to do when it comes to drag race suspension, because if you guys knew the amount of even like that BMR drag racing kit, the 15-inch conversion kit, we sell so many of those things. I mean, so I definitely see it. What you're saying, Nielsen.
And they're not even a direct bolt-in either.
No, you
very
still
close,
need to get,
but not.
Yeah, they're as close as you could get really. But there's still work to be done, right? I would love to make like a all together kit. I would love to put I would even love to get brakes involved in it. Like, oh, here's a set of Willwoods that fit with it, and here's this, and here's that, and $2,000 or whatever it ends up being. You have literally everything you need to go with a 15, including a dedicated drag, coilover setup or whatnot. But you also run into the situation where if, like right now, if you want to run a dedicated drag rear shock, they're not going to fit in a stock lower control arm. And you got a lot of guys who drag these cars that are NA that don't have, that don't warrant a 15-inch conversion, that are saying, look, dude, I want a really good suspension. I want to drag suspension. I'm dragging my car every weekend, but I don't want to go 15s. I'm cool with 17s. And you're like, well, you don't have a choice, right? I mean, you have a choice. You could run a 17 on your 15-inch conversion, but you're not putting a drag coilover or a drag suspension setup on unless you buy a 15-inch conversion. So you're kind of limited. I would like to see, and something I should really look into is, somehow getting a Viking shock or a Strange or an AFCO to fit in a stock lower control arm.
I believe Mark Carlisle had a rear shock that fit the stock lower control arm, but
his lower control
sold out or quit or whatever that was. But
he sold the company to BMR, from what I understand. So now BMR owns Carlisle. But then I don't know if that's a conflict with them too, because they have their own 15-inch conversion, right? So it's
right. It's kind of contradictory.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about like solid rear ends?
That's another one. I mean, that's a really shallow pool of guys.
It really is.
That are needing
if there's
a solid
affordable bolt-in-ish setup. Yeah. Everybody would jump on it. But the thing is there's so much fabricating even when it's a bolt-in kit.
That's a big ask.
I believe Rick's kit's going to be like the closest.
Yeah.
But
not affordable.
I don't know the ins and outs. Yeah, not affordable.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I would like, yeah. I mean, you could, Rick's a pioneer, right? I mean, Rick does a lot of stuff. He's the first to do a lot of things. But at the end of the day, like, what's affordable to most people, right? I mean, to go with a solid rear, that's a big job. No matter how you look at it, even if you had a bolt-in kit, that's not something you're not doing that in your driveway on jack stands in 2-3 hours. I mean, that's a big job,
Mm-hmm.
And big jobs cost big money. And if you want something, if you're putting down a ton of power where you need that, then that thing's built with quality parts that cost a lot of money.
And the only way that's going to happen in your driveway would be like the whole K member, and it's just a click.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You could just drop it and drop a new one in. But
the Skyview kit is close, but not a direct bolt-in for the G8 chassis.
See, and I mean, the people that would actually put that in there and need it, feel like there'd be a lot of people purchasing it, but not really putting down the power to warrant that style.
Oh, yeah. I mean, unless you're already cutting consistent 1.3s on mediocre prep, you don't need it.
Yeah.
No. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, for a lot of guys, even the guys where cost isn't an issue, at some point cost becomes an issue, right? Like, for you to get to that point where you actually need something, like you said, where you're cutting a solid 1.3, right? A consistent. Think of the amount of money that's been dumped into a car to get it to that point, right? There are very few people in this community that are at that point, that are saying the only way I'm going to increase my ETs is by doing this, right? And I can't see something like that costing any less than like $8,000 or $9,000. I mean,
that's your starting price.
Yeah,
I mean, I had 10 in my mind for that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure. I mean, most guys, and and I think this is probably not just our community, but the racing community as a whole. That's a big chunk of change to just say, okay. I mean, unless you are in dire need and you have exhausted all other options, that's not the pill that guys are just going to swallow, right? That's not okay, $10,000, and let's hope it does something for me. Right. that's why like Rick coming out with something, I think that's great because people follow Rick to see, who are hot on his tracks, right? Who are like, oh, yeah.
That's the reason why I went solid axle. I saw
Right.
it. He was going that route, and I've been eyeing it up for a long time. And it's like, all right, well, if he's making the jump and he's doing what was it, low 1.2s IRS?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, he thinks he's at the limit then.
Yeah.
So if he's shooting for 1.1s, 1.0s, and he's doing this, I'm going that way right away. Like, forget the motor. Built motor can wait. And I just dumped everything I had into a solid axle setup, and it cost at least twice what I thought it would cost.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, when you get to that point, it's just there's no affordable way around it,
No.
And you're asking people to, I'm not asking, but I'm saying like you're expecting at that point, someone is going to spend almost, actually, when you're done building it, you're adding all the options, you're going to spend what one of these cars cost. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, right.
Actually, like $500 less than what I paid for my car.
There you go. It's crazy. It really is crazy. But it's a great option for the guys. And I'm actually really happy that Rick's doing it. And I know there's other guys that are doing it. There's other companies that are doing it. That's such a tight market to put the R&D into, because to have a shop that could do one and say, okay, we could bang out one of these, or we're going to get a couple order these a year, maybe, great. But to have on a retail end where you're like, oh, I need to have these like on deck. I mean, that's just not something, me personally, I think it's feasible.
On a good year, you probably sell 3.
Maybe, And then you got to freight each one of them. What I'm saying?
I mean,
oh gosh.
yeah. What would the
scary
return be
on
on
the
that,
buying side?
If
someone could get a weld-in cage, I think enough guys are getting fast enough and concerned about their safety that there's nothing out there. Literally nothing, unless you bring your car to a chassis shop or you have a chassis guy that's a friend.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm about to make the jump, and it's going to be about
in a heartbeat. My wife's been beating me up for 3 years now. Like, you better not die in that car.
Harness bar is just not going to do it.
I can't see that being overly expensive once the R&D is done, right? I mean, once the R&D is done and the measurements are done, you make it. I don't weld, I don't do fabrication, but once you make a jig and everything, the initial investment. I could see it like the headers, for example, like the 2-inch headers. We spent a lot of money up front to have them do the R&D and to make the jigs and do all that stuff and get the exclusivity and all that blah blah blah. But then afterwards, you're like, okay, now you have a number. I have to sell X amount of kits. But I think something like that would sell because ultimately, you're going to see people like Pat. You touched on this before. You're going to see people putting them in that don't need them. Just they want a cage. They think it's cool, right? And
a lot of V6 guys.
You'll see a lot of guys who are like, 500, 600 wheel, and they're gonna be like, yeah, man, I need a cage. You're like, all right, by all means, but yeah, that is a really, I jotted that one down. That was a really good one.
Yeah, I like that one. That's a great one.
Yeah.
What about like a non-parts side of your website? Like, for me, coming in green, not knowing a lot, I have hundreds, probably thousands of hours of research and forums and bookmarks and all that. You ever think about gathering some most common knowledge for our cars into one like info page or just getting started tab?
It's actually not
I know
bad.
It'd be a lot of work and info, but I think for a lot of your customers, a lot of the G8 base people are new, starting into it, don't really know much about it. And I think having like a just getting started page would be great for those guys.
Yeah, we are seeing a lot of guys, one of the trends I see, right, is every couple of years you see this massive turnover, right? Every couple of years you see a whole lot of names popping up on my order list that I'm not familiar with, right? Like I feel like I know a lot more people than I actually know, right? Because I see the names coming up on the screen, like, oh, this guy bought something. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And after a while of seeing the same name, you're like, you almost feel like, that's my buddy, because he buys a lot of stuff from me, but you get used to seeing the names, and then I notice every I'd say like every 2 or 3 years, it's been a trend. Every couple of years, there's a big change in names, right? These cars are changing hands now, and people are getting them, and it's a new to me car, and they're making it their own, right? They're modifying it. It's not a bad suggestion at all. Like a My First Mod page, or where do I go from here kind of page,
exactly. Like a center point for all the forums, not necessarily, because there's a liability aspect of it too. You give this person some info, they use it, some doesn't work out, they didn't do something right. Then they're coming after you.
But yeah, I mean, one of the other things that I was looking to do, I get a lot of requests for like t-shirts. I get a lot of requests for merch, right? And that's just something that going into this, I never really thought of. I never thought that I would be the company that people would say, yeah, man, I want a t-shirt with a G8 only logo on it, or whatever, but I get a ton of requests for it. And the shirts that we did for the giveaway, I had designed all those shirts, and I drew them all out, and excuse me. And I have a lot of people that hit me up. They're like, man, I want that. Can I still buy that shirt even though the giveaway's up? And I'm like, I guess, because it wasn't something I ever really, thought about. But that's something that I want to do moving forward. Is I want to have like a merch section, like an ever changing merch section of just, whatever it happens to be, t-shirts or hats or, lanyard or whatever. I don't even know.
Fresheners.
Dude,
Number one item.
Is it really? I'm so disconnected from that like I didn't even realize it. Like, for example, my guy Steve that works here with me, he's like really into the racing scene, and every day he actually had mentioned it to me when I was talking about it. He's like, yeah, bro, that's a great idea. He's like, all I wear is race stuff, is car merch. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, bro, you never noticed? He's like, I don't own a shirt that's not, that doesn't have some company's logo on it. They're all like, and I noticed ever since he said that, I don't think this guy owns a shirt that's just like a blank shirt. Like, it's literally every day he's wearing like a 1320 shirt, or he's wearing some Cletus shirt, or he's wearing a Nitrous Express shirt, or he's wearing something,
Free advertising once they're sold.
Yep.
Well, I had asked him, I'm like, are they giving these to you? And he's like, no, bro, this shirt cost me $45. This one was $28. I'm like, really? And I'm like, you're buying shirts to put somebody that like Nielsen said, like, to advertise for somebody. He's like, I don't look at it like that. He's like, to me, it's supporting the community. I'm like, all right, and he's like, as long as it's got a dope design. And I'm like, all right.
See, I always use the shirts to get past my dollar mark for the free shipping. Like, ooh, I'm like $22 low. What can I buy? Oh, a hoodie.
That's a pro move, veteran move right there.
Right. I pay $22 for shipping or $24 for a hoodie. Oh, I know.
You ever gonna have a G8 only meet?
Yeah.
Or I don't know how to call all of your websites, but an only meet, I guess.
Well, it's
only meat.
Only meat. I'll call it onlymeat.com. It'll do very well.
I subscribe
the way you expect, though.
No, but we did one. You guys probably all live too far away, but we did one at Ocean City Cruising a while back, and that was great. It was like a spur of the moment type thing. And we also did. We had a track meet probably about 3 or 4 years ago. I can remember, maybe a little longer, up at Englishtown Raceway up here, but they've since closed that down. And then we did one down in North Carolina at Rick's. We did a Winter Nationals. Events they're a lot of work goes into it, running an event successfully. If we're a small company, so I just don't have the manpower, but it is definitely something that I want to do again. And the big part is finding the venue, because a lot of the really good venues, these guys are booked out for years. That was one of the issues. I don't want to say issues, but we actually went as far as to trying to plan the one, and we couldn't get it. We couldn't nail a date down. because they were like, listen, you know, it was actually during COVID. And I want to say it was, what year is it? 22? I want to say it was maybe 21. It was 21. And they were like, look, we had so many venues or so many events we had to cancel last year, you know, the year before because of COVID, but it kind of screwed me in the end because they had no dates when it was said and done. They had no dates available, you know, but it is definitely something I want to do. And, you know, if you guys have some intel on that, I mean, like we're all spread out, right? I mean, you're in Colorado, Nielsen, where are you at?
Wisconsin.
All right, you're in Wisconsin, Dave. You're out in Georgia. I mean, it's like it's really hard to find. Because I would love to find something that, you know, the majority of everybody could go to, but it's like, you know, there's no central breeding ground for this type of stuff, you know?
Yeah, no, there's really not.
You know, because no matter what, you feel bad for the guy. It's like, who's like, yeah, I'd love to go, but it's 16-hour drive. And you're like, shit, man,
Right.
you know, I wouldn't make that either. You know what I'm saying? Although I do for the extravaganza for them, you know, like every time I go down to the extravaganza, somehow I feel like the trip gets longer. I'm like, they're moving to Valdosta. You know? But are you guys going to that? By the way, you guys going to the extravaganza?
Probably
Nielsen. No, see?
Probably will.
Yeah.
I'm not going to run again though.
You got a bad track record there, bro. I'm gonna go only because I do worry that it might be the last one, you know, and you know, end of an era kind of thing. Like it is a really good event, and you do get to meet a lot of really cool people. So it's definitely something I want to go to, and I just hope that it's not the last one, you know. But yeah. So getting back to that, yeah, that is something I want to do, and I think if this does end up being the last one, the last extravaganza, then I feel like it's going to be something I'm definitely going to want to do. I'm going to have to devote some time into it because I feel at that point, there's really, what else is there? You know,
not much.
Yeah. I don't think besides the extravaganza, is there any other like Holden only? Besides, I know there's a lot of Holden Tail the Dragon. They do the Holden run down in Nevada, right? I think it's in Nevada. They do the Holden run, Las Vegas, right? And that's great. I mean, that services the West Coast guys. I've seen pictures. That thing looks like an amazing event, but it'll never go anywhere past Nevada, right? So it's like, what do you do? You know, I've even thought of, and this is a big ask for people, but I've even thought of seeing if I could take a couple people on that live in different areas, and I could say, look, this year we'll do one on the East Coast, you know, and we'll schedule another one for next year, you know, Central. You know, and then we'll do another one West Coast, we'll do another one South, and we'll do another one, you know, Southeast, Southwest, you know, something like I would love to spread them out that way. But I mean, now you're taking the work and you're times it by 5. And if I don't have a good set of a good team that's willing to help me out in each one of those points, it's going to be impossible for me, you know. But maybe you guys could help. Who knows? I know Dave's always down to help.
Yeah, I'm already got GS. What is it? All those parts still sitting in my garage that we got to do. So I have like a secondary warehouse waiting on it.
I have sent this guy parts that he's like, bro, can you please take these parts back? I'm like, yeah, I'll get you a label. Yeah. This guy's like, he's G8 only warehouse southeast. He's just
right. But it was a whole wall at one time, like a whole wall in the garage. It was bad.
I mean, if you ever needed anything, you had it right there.
Yeah, it's true. I'm like, hey, that extra set of valve covers you sent, the next time somebody buys it and it's this way, just let me know. I'll go drop them off.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was like duplicates and stuff. He's like, Joe,
it was duplicate, doubles.
I didn't buy this. I'm like, I'll get you a label, and I just forget. Like dude, my memory is so shot. It's bad, right. But.
Do you have just like a suggestions tab on the website? Like for anything like that? I don't know that I've seen it, but I mean,
I used to. I actually that was one of the things I had when I first started out, because there were so many companies that I was getting requested all the time. And I had right on my homepage, I actually had a bar that said, like, you know, suggest a part or suggest a brand or whatever. But, you know, I actually had to take it off, unfortunately, because of I don't know what you call them, bots or whatever, spam bots or whatever. Like I was getting hundreds at a time, hundreds of emails from that form. And not just that form. I had another one that was like an email form, like if you want to be on our email list and everything. And I would get hundreds and hundreds of these submissions, and I would say 90% of them were spam. And then I got in the habit of I was just deleting them all because it was just clogging up my inbox. I was just deleting all the messages, and I would have people hit me up like, "Hey man, I sent you a message, or I asked to join your email list, but I'm not getting any emails. Are you sending emails out like email blasts?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're not getting them." Like, no, and I'm like, "No, I probably deleted it, because it was just spam for me because I was getting so many hundreds of them. I couldn't filter them out,
Was that even with like a login, like you log into your account situation to make the suggestion, or was it just type it in and there you go?
That was just like it was just there to type it. I
wonder if you could have like somebody write some software to where you could like go through it that way. Like
you have to log
into your account. Yeah. I can talk to my brother. He's a software engineer person. So
yeah, that'd be cool to know. Because I know that they have like that CAPTCHA stuff where you have to like, pick the pictures of the boat out.
Yeah, pick that and all that stuff.
And I don't want to do that to people who are like, hey, right. I want to, hey, Joe, it'd be nice if you had this in there. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me pick out 9 pictures of motorcycles. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just seems like so. Exactly.
And you know what? Trivia.
Exactly.
Last question for you.
Shoot.
Calendar. What are we looking at?
Oh, they're in print, dude. The calendar. That is something if you've followed me or if you've been an owner for a while, that was something that was a huge success. Everyone loved it years ago. I won't go into why we stopped doing it, but if you know the story, you already know. But we decided to bring it back this year, and they are in print. They should be here, I'm hoping, right before the end of the year. That's what the timeline's looking at. So my goal is to get them out. I would love to have them in people's hands first of the year, but realistically, I mean, with Christmas and everything, it's almost impossible to guarantee that. Yeah. So I would like to see those things moving by the end of the year, like moving on their way to customers and getting to them like, end of the first week of January kind of thing. But I'm hoping to have them in my hand within the next like 10 business days, maybe,
Were they all like customer submissions?
Yeah.
Or did you choose? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
They were all customer submissions. I picked them, and that was a big contest in the past. A lot of guys, or I shouldn't say guys, but a lot of people had issue with me picking the pictures, and they were like, they're like, oh, I mean, I've had people call me out on it. So like, oh, my car looks better than what you picked for January. Why isn't my car there? I'm like, dude, I got 9,000 submissions. You know what I'm saying? And the big thing for me is in another world, in another life, I was a graphic designer. So I know what pictures are going to print well and what's not. And a lot of guys will send me some really dope photos. I mean, like some really nice pics. And then you look at them and it's like, they're like 72 DPI and they look great on a phone, right? And when they're this big, but when you have to blow them up and print them at 300, 350 plus DPI, they're just a cloudy mess, As a matter of fact, this calendar that we did this year, I actually had to change the size of the calendar from, I normally do a 12 by 12. I had to change it to an 8.5 by 11 because so many of the photos that I wanted to use that were really good were cropped awkwardly, whether it had been for the internet usage or whatever they had their original use for them. They were cropped so bad that I couldn't even force them into a 12 by 12 without cutting part of the car off, and so there's so much that goes into it, but yeah, they are back, and I'm actually really happy that they're back. I love doing them, and I know that everyone likes seeing them on the wall, and
Can you purchase them now?
I haven't done a pre-order on them. I'm probably going to wait until I get the shipping notification. Once I know they're en route to me, then I'll probably open them up for orders. But as of right now, no, I haven't done a pre-order on them. Other than that, though,
that's it for me.
Yeah, we're all good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, guys. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll be doing more of these and I'll be a little better prepared with the camera and everything. All right, guys.
Joe, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Yes, thank you, guys. Have a good one. Gentlemen. All right. Later.
Easy.